man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Silent Bob, and all those terrible Jay and Silent Bob type pictures, man. You're listening to Drop the Mic, the only podcast that I listen to that I'm not a part of. Every podcast I listen to, I usually talk on it, but not fucking Drop the Mic. That's where I'm like, let me hear what the boys have to say. And now, we drop the mic.
Caleb Colton no longer belongs to our world.
We'll give him a week, see if we can call him one of us.
He belongs to hers.
But you have to learn to kill.
He belongs to theirs.
I don't want to kill.
He makes you kill tonight.
And they all belong to the night.
It's 3 hours short for a bus ticket home. You help me out?
What are you on?
Believe me, I told you.
Just don't think of it as killing.
Evening.
Don't think at all. It's just something that you do night after night. It's only ever a question of how.
You nervous? I would be too if I were you. Near Dark.
Welcome back to our humble San Diego podcast. We are your hosts, Wesley Swanson and Chris Pawlak, and together we are bringing you another one of Pawlak's end of the month takeovers with episode 293, Showdown at Sunrise. As we round out October, Chris and I both thought it would be great to discuss Kathryn Bigelow's 80s cult classic, Near Dark. But before we dive deep into that unique spin on vampire lore, let's get warmed up, shall we? How are you, man? And welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I apologize that when our last show did not work out as was hoped. I had worked like all through September and even through mid-October, like 6 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just because I was working so much, my only days off are filled with so much stuff that I'm trying to get done.
Yeah.
And when that one was coming up, you know, it got to be a day or two before, and I was thinking, man, like, I don't know if I even really have the time to give to the show, and now I feel super bad about that. But so I really am sorry that last one did not work out. I didn't mean to leave you hanging.
No. And then, you know, I think we were both mutually under a lot of pressure for different reasons. So, you know, no hard feelings whatsoever. But I did have some listeners reach out and ask where that episode went. So,
oh, bummer.
So that's
bummer. I let down the listeners too.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool though that people were paying attention. Like I had told you off air, I did promote that was coming up. So hopefully sometimes we can reschedule that and do that film, you know.
Yeah, maybe we'll circle back to that and make that a bonus episode, or we'll calendar it for one of the end of the month episodes next year, because we're already booked up through Christmas this year.
Yeah.
But thanks for making me feel really bad about that. No, it's all good. I am sorry, and that was, like I said, that was a pretty rough week for the both of us, and working 6 days a week is awesome. I don't mind it, but then you realize kind of you have very little time to do anything else.
Yes.
And that was a week where it was a lot going on, and unfortunately, I realized a little too late that I probably didn't have the time to give to the show.
And now for a special news report. Brought to you by Drop the Mic.
All right, man. So, pop culture news. Do you have anything for us this week?
I have no pop culture news. I just want to give a reminder that November 8th is Election Day. Please make sure that you vote if you're a California citizen, which I'm going to guess that the majority of your listeners are. You should already have a ballot through the mail. Make sure that you fill that out. Make sure that you get that mailed by, I would say, next week. They say it has to be postmarked by the 8th, but I wouldn't mess around and wait that long. I would get it done and sent out by sometime next week, to make sure they have plenty of time to get it to the registrar, or you can drop it off at the registrar in person if you wish, but make sure that you vote. As I always say, every election is important, and it seems like the more we go the more important each election seems to be. Because there's people out there that just want to basically slide into fascism.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that doesn't happen. Make sure that you get out and vote.
Absolutely. Do your part.
Absolutely. We're pretty good in California. California's a pretty liberal state, so I'm not terribly worried, but if any of your listeners are like from Arizona or Florida or Pennsylvania or Georgia, definitely make sure that you guys are voting, because those are some very important races happening in those states right now.
All right. So this week I don't have too much news. Just I wanted to give a shout out to Jordan Peele's new film Nope. Just hit Blu-ray and 4K if you're into digital stuff, and if not, it will be coming to streaming exclusively on Peacock next month. So check that out. Pick it up.
Yeah, check out Nope. Nope's a good movie.
And then in some other streaming news, Barbarian just hit HBO Max. So if you haven't seen it yet, highly recommend that little horror film. It's starring Georgina Campbell, Justin Long, and Bill Skarsgård. Check it out. Have you seen that yet?
I have seen it. I thought it was good, but who recommended that? You said one of your friends had really recommended it because they saw it early.
Oh, Ryan.
Was it Ryan?
I believe so, yeah.
I thought Ryan blew it up a little.
More than it needed to be?
Yeah, because I was like, oh, it's good, but I didn't have my balls blown off by it. I did like that there's basically two separate storylines.
Yeah.
And it takes quite a while before they actually converge. I like that aspect. And it's a good movie. I did enjoy it. And then I found out later that it was directed by one of the guys from The Whitest Kids You Know.
Yeah, super random, right?
Super random. But I liked it. Georgina Campbell's good in it. Justin Long is pretty great in it.
Yeah, what a role for him.
Yeah. And Skarsgård is good in it too.
Of course.
And now it's time for the weekly recommendations.
Oh, man. I got two, what I consider very, very good ones. Just rewatched The Lighthouse the other night. God, is that a great movie.
The most weirdest shit.
It's so good. I think it's safe to say that we're both really huge Robert Eggers fans.
Yes.
And Joel said he just rewatched The Witch, which I watched a couple months ago, so I haven't made it a point to rewatch it for Halloween. But said, I only saw The Lighthouse the one time when I saw it in the theaters a few years ago. It's playing on, I think, Showtime right now. So I wanted to sit down and rewatch it, and it did not disappoint. It's so fucking good. Pattinson is great in it, but man, Willem Dafoe is on another level in that movie. And just like the black and white cinematography is great. It's very weird. It like gets kind of creepy. There's almost like some Cronenberg-esque body horror. It's so good. So I highly recommend that to anyone who hasn't seen it. And if you have, watch it again for sure. It's awesome.
Do you know, is that streaming anywhere currently?
I think it's on Prime right now as well.
Okay.
Yeah, watch that. And my second one is a show on Hulu that I had wrapped up Reservation Dogs, which if you haven't checked out Reservation Dogs, check it out. It's great. But I wrapped that up, and one of the other suggested shows was a show called This Fool, with Chris Estrada and Frankie Quinones. And I watched it kind of going in cold, not really knowing anything about it. Fucking loved it. It was hilarious. I guess it's Chris Estrada's a comedian, and I guess he had kind of based that show on his life, or at some part during his life, he had worked with like reformed gangbangers, gang members. And that's kind of like where the show kind of starts off. And just his delivery is really funny. A lot of his line deliveries, like a lot of the delivery and with like the casual cursing throughout just made me laugh so hard. There's a great supporting turn from Michael Imperioli, who runs the nonprofit that helps these reformed gang members. And I had so much fun. And fortunately, it's only 10 episodes and only has the one season so far. But I really hope it comes back for another season or two, because I really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny as hell.
I just watched that maybe, I think, last month or so, and I binged it because it's so addicting.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
It was so funny. So I'm glad that you know what I'm talking about. Hopefully other people will check it out, and if not, hopefully they'll go and search it out.
That's on Hulu, right?
Yeah, it's on Hulu. And again, watch Reservation Dogs, because it's fantastic. And the second season is great.
I haven't watched the second season yet, but I'm a fan of that show, and I need to check that out as soon as possible.
Yeah. For sure. They had some really great episodes this season. Not that they didn't in the first season, because there's some episodes in the first season which I think were amazing. And then the second season had another handful of really amazing episodes.
All right, so for mine, I wanted to turn the clock back, so to speak, and give a shout out to some vintage kind of Catherine Bigelow stuff. So first up, of course, shout out to Point Break.
I am an FBI agent. Point Break, which we're going to reference in tonight's episode, because one of the future cast members of Point Break has a bit role in this.
If you haven't seen Point Break, first of all, what are you doing? You should see it. Check it out. It's streaming right now on Netflix. Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze, amazing staple in action cinema. So check that out. Point Break.
If I haven't said it before, Point Break is like one of those movies where even with the sound off, the action sequences are really fucking awesome.
Absolutely, man. And then, of course, my second rec for the week, again, going with the Catherine Bigelow theme, The Hurt Locker. Jeremy Renner.
Hurt Locker's a great movie.
Also on Netflix, so readily available.
You know what's not on Netflix and readily available?
What?
Strange Days.
Yeah.
Speaking of Catherine Bigelow, as this entire episode is, like, Strange Days. Please, someone get their shit together. Put that out there.
Yeah, bring it out.
We went over this before last year when we talked about it. It's like my clear favorite Catherine Bigelow movie by a mile, and good luck trying to find it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now for the movie focus of the week.
All right. So with that being said, we're going to move into our main focus if you're ready, my man.
Absolutely.
So tonight we're talking about Near Dark. It's from 1987. It's rated R. It's a neo-Western horror film, and it runs at 1 hour and 34 minutes. And it's got a well-deserved 82 on Rotten.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I would say. Can't really argue with that this time. Written by Catherine Bigelow and Eric Red. Directed by, of course, Catherine Bigelow. Starring Adrian Pasdar as Caleb Colton, Jenny Wright as May, Bill Paxton as Severin, Jeanette Goldstein as Diamondback, Lance Henriksen as Jesse Hooker, Joshua John Miller as Homer, Tim Thomerson as Loy Colton, and Marcy Leeds as Sarah Colton. The story follows a young man, Caleb, who is accidentally bitten by a vampire, May, during an intimate encounter. Soon, Caleb finds himself unable to escape a group of unhinged outlaw vamps and slowly finds himself adapting to their lifestyle. Writer-director Kathryn Bigelow started off as a painter before stumbling upon filmmaking, where she started with various shorts. In 1981, she released her first feature entitled The Loveless, starring Willem Dafoe. Shout out. Her follow-up would be Near Dark, but her first intentions were to make a Western film. But by the late 80s, Westerns had become somewhat uncool and led her to the idea to combine genres, mixing horror, which was trending massively at the time, with a neo-Western vibe. Most of the cast are very recognizable, and that's because they are, for the most part, all from the Aliens universe. At the time of pre-production, writer-director James Cameron and Bigelow were friends, and Cameron suggested she take a look at the actors, which she did, obviously. Although the film doesn't necessarily depend on him, Bill Paxton is the scene stealer throughout this film, giving a wildly charismatic and fun performance. Near Dark opened on October 2nd, 1987, and only made about $3.4 million against its $5 million budget. However, the film suffered due to some rights issues, not allowing the film to be shown as widely as it could have been. Through the years, the film has gained a loyal cult following, with Bigelow going on to be one of the most prolific and recognizable filmmakers still in the game today. Overall, Near Dark is an extremely fun, violent art house flick that for some reason still has a hard time being recognized and talked about in the world of film currently. Everything works, from the Tangerine Dream's incredible score to the dangerous Terminator-esque sensibilities of Adam Greenberg's camera work. Bigelow takes a big swing and hits it out of the park with this criminally underrated gem. 4 out of 5 Spurs. Thank you.
The Spurs. Yeah, the Spurs are a cool touch. Everyone is so good in this movie, but Bill Paxton is having a blast.
It's so funny to me because I feel like his character, had it been anybody else, could have been somewhat of a throwaway character, but he brings so much to it, and it's young Bill Paxton, and he really hasn't done anything like this, or hadn't done anything like this since, that it's just such a standout, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, he's so good. He's real fun and kind of quippy, but he's also probably the most unhinged.
Oh yeah,
of the group.
Like literally past the point of fuck it all the way.
Yeah,
where he will go off the rails in a split second, and which he proves in the bar, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the bar scene, which we'll talk about, is real awesome. It's probably the centerpiece of the movie.
Yeah.
I think he has most, if not all, of my favorite lines in the film.
Finger licking good.
Finger licking good. There's the I hate it when they ain't been shaved.
Mm-hmm. When
he goes to bite the biker. When they first pick Caleb up, he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna separate your head from your shoulders." And then when Pazdar asks, you know, what's going on, he's like, "Oh, it's not what's going on; it's what's coming off your head or your face." He's like, "Your face is coming clean off." And then probably my favorite bit in the movie is when they're in the motel room playing cards, and Homer brings the little girl in, who we find out is Sarah, Caleb's sister.
The sister, yeah.
When he brings her in, she's like, "Oh, you know, you people stay up really late." And Paxton just turns to her and says, "We keep odd hours." Like with his face still kind of half burnt, and the cigarette in the mouth, and the sunglasses and everything.
Yeah, we're
yeah, like you said, it's a cross between a Western and a horror film, so much so that I kind of had some doubts that we should make this the Halloween episode, because that's what it is our Halloween episode. And it's like, oh, is this necessarily like a scary movie or a horror movie? Because I don't really think that it is. I mean, it's a vampire movie, so I guess you would have to classify it as horror.
Yeah, it definitely falls in that kind of subgenre. It's made in such a way where I could see why you would question it if it would, if it's a good pick for this, but nonetheless, we're here right now. So
that's right. We are here. So we've committed to making it a horror movie for Halloween. So when you say that she wanted to make a Western and Westerns weren't popular at the time, I was thinking, really? Because at least 2 years prior, before this movie to this movie coming out, there's two great Westerns that are out in 1985. And that's Silverado, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I highly recommend that to anyone who hasn't seen it. The score is great, and it's got real good, really fun performances from Danny Glover and Kevin Kline, Scott Glenn, Kevin Costner in like one of his first movies. And I'll say to this day, like, the first act is probably a comedy. Because the first act, there's so much funny shit happening in the first part of that movie. But then it turns into like a real Western, and it's fantastic. So Silverado is out, and Pale Rider, Clint Eastwood's Pale Rider, and both of which are awesome. And I don't know, I'm going to assume that they were both hits. I don't know for sure. Maybe they both bombed, but right off the bat, when I hear that Westerns weren't popular by the time this movie got made, I think, well, those two Westerns a couple of years before this were awesome.
Well, when I wrote that, my I guess my intentions were that Westerns didn't come back necessarily in a big way to the mainstream, at least in my opinion, until Unforgiven in '92.
And even then, a lot of what comes after Unforgiven doesn't really do well. Because I know that Wyatt Earp bombs. I think Tombstone does pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But Wyatt Earp bombs. I think Geronimo bombed. God, what are some other Westerns I was trying to think of around that time? And no, that's not necessarily even what you wrote, or not really suggested by what you wrote. Because that turned up in my research too. Was that she wants to do the Western, but they're like, oh, Westerns aren't really doing well these days, so she couldn't get the financing that she wanted.
Yeah, because you have to think about doing an authentic Western. You're pumping all of this money just to make a period piece.
Yeah, you're a period piece. Then you have the animals that you have to deal with. So that probably would have been a much more expensive film than $5 million.
Yes.
So like she can't get the financing to really make a Western. So her and Red come up with this decision to kind of mix the genres. And if you watch the movie, as you and I both have, a couple of times in the last day or two, there's a lot of Western tropes in the film.
And even using the at least the film opens, you're in like this kind of very small town in Oklahoma.
Yeah, and he's got the horse and the cowboy hat. There's a shootout scene where they're cornered. There's the going into the bar and like causing all kinds of trouble scene. Obviously the end with him on the horseback, like going after his sister.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lots of Western tropes, even like some of the weapons that they carry. Jesse's got that looks like an old .45 revolver with the cross on the pearl handle with the cross on it,
which is cool because I feel like this movie does a great job of nobody really ever refers to anyone as vampires.
No, like it's a vampire movie where no one says anything about vampires. I don't think they have fangs. You never see them.
No.
Even like most of the kills are either with weapons or knives.
Yes.
There's very few actual biting scenes.
Or sunlight, obviously.
Yeah, sunlight, obviously. Whereas, you never see like any like reflections. There's nothing having to do with the reflections. No holy water. The typical vampire mythology. You know, crosses, wooden stakes. None of that stuff is present in the film or remarked upon. But yeah, they obviously drink human blood. They obviously never age.
Because Hooker or Lance Henriksen's character, even he refers to himself, he says that he was a Confederate soldier, right?
Yeah, when Caleb asks him, you know, hey, how old are you? He's like, oh, I'll put it this way. I fought for the South.
And we lost.
We lost. So for all those in the back row not paying attention down south, you lost. Stop acting like you won. Or stop trying to bring it back to that time. So here's I think the line goes like this. I think Jesse is the oldest. I think Severin is number 2 because they make a reference to the Chicago fire.
Mm-hmm.
Diamondback, who's Jeanette Goldstein's character, they met sometime. She refers to she had a flat tire, so obviously in the age of automobiles, probably 20th century at some point. It's never really clear, I think, who Homer got turned by. But I would assume I just assume Severin because he seems like that kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
And then Homer makes reference to him turning May, and May's only about 4 years old. And in Vampire, like since she got turned, she's only about 4 years old. But Homer turned her because he was what she say a kid pretending he needed help with his homework.
Yes.
She's in high school, probably tutoring, and that's how it goes. So I think that's the kind of the line of how old each character is. But they have formed this family, and you can tell that. Even though he's older, you can tell that Severin's like the jerk kid, the jerk like teenager, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how he acts. Obviously, like Jesse and Diamondback are the parents. But even though Homer is obviously an older vampire, there's some like kind of tender moments between Jesse and Diamondback and Homer. Where it's almost like they are parents to him. When they're in the motel room and the cops show up to do the raid, he gets very scared. Homer does.
Yeah.
And, Jesse kind of yells at him and tells him to get his shit together. But Diamondback's the one that kind of rushes over to him and, comforts him. And then later on, when Homer brings Sarah in with the intention of turning her so that he can have a playmate around his age. Like, she's the one that kind of scolds him. She's the one that, what are you doing? And she's going to be the parent to tell him that, no, that this is wrong. You shouldn't be doing this. So they very much form a family. But yeah, I don't really know how old Severin is. Like, how old, he's supposed to be. My guess is early 20s, maybe mid 20s. Homer's obviously a child.
He's, I believe, 6 or 16.
16?
Yeah.
Severin?
No, Homer, sorry. Homer.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks young. Even though Homer's probably like, he's such a shit. Like when they first get him, he's like threatening to shoot him. When everyone's like introducing themselves, Homer's the one that like grabs Caleb's balls and tells him, like, my name's Homer, and he spells it, and he's like, oh, if you mispronounce it, like, I wouldn't want to be you.
That must have been so fun to be, like the only child on that set, really. Besides Caleb's sister, but she has, way less screen time.
Yeah, she's only in a handful of scenes.
But you have Homer fucking smoking and doing.
When they're in the bar, he like orders a tequila, and I swear the waitress actually brings him a shot of tequila. I'm thinking, what fucking bar is this? They're serving an obvious minor.
I don't know, those small towns, dude. Maybe they just don't want no trouble.
But when they get to the bar and Jesse orders, a beer with a glass, and Homer's like, tequila. And then the waitress shows back up with the beer and a glass and a shot of tequila.
What they do to that waitress, man, that's like, it's like 0 to 10 in a couple seconds.
Yeah, Jesse's like real creepy and antagonistic towards her, like when she comes back with the drinks, he says, oh yeah, just sweep the glass. And then, he's like, oh, you're shaking all over. And it's almost like they're taking joy in terrorizing these people before they kill them, instead of just killing them.
Yeah, they definitely toy with them, and they string out that interaction way longer than it really had to be,
Yeah.
where they almost take pleasure. And that's kind of, going back to the Western tropes, I feel like that's kind of what's going on, is just they have this outlaw mentality, like, we're gonna fucking do whatever we want,
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're into it, so let's talk about the bar. So really quick, like, Caleb meets May. He's trying to, woo her. He's very creepy about it, too.
Mm-hmm.
So when she says, oh, the sun's coming up, take me home, he's like, oh, yeah, sure, but first, like, before you have to kiss me first. And then he, like, stuffs his car keys, like, down his shirt.
Yeah, when I watched that, or when I screened the movie again for the show, that's what stood out to me as far as, Caleb is pretty much our main character, but he's kind of like a somewhat shitty guy. Like, you don't completely dislike him, but you're like, it makes you fearful of maybe he will just, turn with this group and it won't be too hard for him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like he'll eventually settle into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He won't have some reservations about, they say you have to kill someone and he can't. He's kind of physically ill with the thought of doing it when they're in the truck.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's kind of a shitty dude.
Where he's yeah, go ahead.
Especially the way that he refuses to take her home until she kisses him, and he like stuffs the car keys down his shirt.
He's like, I'm not asking for too much, or something like that.
Yeah, dude, that's got some real date rapey vibes to it.
Yeah. But I mean, he pays a price for it, because had he just did what she wanted, he wouldn't have probably got bit. I don't know if they were planning on feeding on him anyway, and that's why they come and kind of scoop him up, because when he's burning in the sun and she's barely changed him, and they come, and they swoop him up in the RV, it seems like they're planning on feeding on him and they're just going to kill him. And then
that's exactly what the plan is.
And May is like, no, I fucked up, and I turned him already. And that's when they're like, well, he has a few days to see, like, how he's going to adjust to this situation.
Yeah. Yeah, like if he had just left well enough alone and, taken her back to the house, because it almost seems like she doesn't want to do that to him.
Yeah. Yeah, like she's trying to avoid what's going on.
Yeah. So, she bites him, and he gets and he's headed back to the house. The truck won't start, so he's wandering through the fields. And right off the bat, and this is another thing I really like about the movie, is it gets going almost immediately.
Oh, yeah.
There's no 30 minutes worth of bullshit before everything. It's very economic. And when you mentioned, the Terminator, when you're with your discussion of DP.
Yes.
When you brought Adam Greenberg up, it feels like a cross between the Terminator and like easily like an 80s John Carpenter movie.
Yeah, it has that kind of sleaze factor to it.
It's the sleaze factor. It's like a tight, like 95 minutes, maybe not even that. It gets going immediately, and that's one of the things I like about the movie. You know, among many, but it starts right off. So he's bit right away, and wandering through the fields, and the effects of him like smoking. Like as the sun's starting to come up and he's wandering through the field, and you know, like his body is starting to smoke because of the sun. Like I thought that was a really cool effect. Like the effects work in this movie are pretty awesome for a $5 million low budget movie.
Do you know how they pulled off that smoke or what it is actually?
Did I read somewhere it's like a cigar?
Yeah, it's some kind of tobacco.
Like through, like that's like a lit cigar, like pumping through a couple of hoses or something.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a cool effect. The makeup effects are really awesome. There's some great squib work in a handful of scenes.
Like when Caleb gets nailed with that double barrel in the bar, and man, he takes the brunt of a lot of abuse through this whole movie, and that's like they just keep attacking the first guy when they get into the, you know, Severin is totally antagonizing this biker at the bar, and then the guy just is swinging on Caleb, and then Severin, like, he turns to Caleb and he's like, yeah, I'm trying to teach the boy a lesson or something, like showing him that he has the power, no?
Yeah. So Caleb takes a few punches, and then, you know, when Severin says, okay, now, like, your turn, he hits the guy and he goes fucking flying across the bar.
On top of the pool table, like smacks the pool table.
So he hits the bar, or he hits the pool table. And you know who the kid is playing pool? It's James LeGros, who is Roach in Point Break. You know, he works with Bigelow later on in Point Break.
That's right. That is him.
I don't know how old he is, or like when he got his start. I'm guessing this is one of his earlier films, but yeah, when's Point Break? Like 4, maybe 5 years after this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's Roach in Point Break, who's great in Point Break, has a great death scene, or almost death scene, when he gets shot at the airport, and then he's dying on the airplane.
That's when he's able to skydive, but then I think he dies before he hits the ground.
Yeah, he dies on the way down. So like Swayze pushes him out, but he says, you know, I'll see you in hell, Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
Like just as Swayze pushes him out. But like, yeah, he's bleeding out, and you know, Reeves makes a reference to, you know, you're cold because, you know, you're losing all of your blood. What does he say? He says something like that, and he's like, I hope it was worth it. You're cold because all the blood is rushing out of your body. Yeah, that's James LeGros, is the kid playing pool in the bar, who looks terrified throughout all of this. But never really makes an attempt to run until it's clear that they're going after him. Yeah, like, I mean, this bar's got to have a back door, right?
Yeah, you would think, but he's just almost mesmerized by all this crazy shit that's happening around him, and nobody's really paying attention to him even being there until May walks over to him and is like, hey, will you dance with me?
Yeah.
And then it becomes clear that she's intending for him to be Caleb's next victim. And then, you know, the kid, he gets scared and just bolts for the window.
Yeah, he completely dives out the window. Which, again, I'm like, wait, isn't there a back door? Would it have been easier?
Yeah, where you're not, because you're taking a big risk that you're going to be critically injured, you know. But he makes it. He does like a little tumble, and then he sprints out and gets away. essentially, because Caleb does catch up to him. They make him go after, the group makes Caleb go after him, and then he doesn't have the heart to go through with it, and that's what does them in, essentially.
Yeah.
Is that
because he ends up bringing the cops to the motel.
Because they somehow, I'm assuming they traced the van, the van that they had.
Yeah.
So
they're after the van, but the bar scene is nuts. Bill Paxton obviously having a great time, like being a real douchebag to the guy that's at the bar drinking when they walk in.
Yeah.
And by the way, like, do you know who the guy at the bar is? The guy that's drinking.
Is he from Terminator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the same dude in Terminator 2 that Schwarzenegger, tells him, "Man, I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle."
And he laughs at him. Yeah.
He laughs and he puts the cigar out on his chest.
Yeah.
That's the same guy. He gets fucked up like in both movies in the bar. It's brutal in Terminator 2 because Schwarzenegger throws him like through the kitchen and he lands on the grill.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the guy in the bar that Paxton's like antagonizing. That Caleb ends up punching across the room. They kill the waitress. Caleb gets shot in the gut, which great squib work there.
I found that interesting that the bartender shoots him first when it's like Severin is clearly the instigator.
Yeah. Logic dictates you would probably try to take out the most dangerous person first, but I guess Caleb was close. So he goes for him first, and big mistake.
Yeah, the bartender definitely pays for that one.
Not that it would have done any good anyways in the end, because they're all vampires, so they would have gotten shot and gotten right back up. But yeah, Severin jumps up on the bar and then slashes him with the spurs.
Yeah, great effects there. Again,
when the guy's neck gets cut open.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Severin goes and fights the other guy that's by the jukebox.
Yeah.
That was when I was watching. I was like, the guy's like, "Don't fuck with me," but he sounds like so unconvincing, like he's scared as hell. But like when he says "Don't fuck with me," I'm thinking, dude, has this guy not been paying attention for the last 5 minutes? You're clearly like out of your element, dude. These guys are gonna kill you. And he's trying to sound all hard and tough by saying, "Don't fuck with me."
He pulls out a knife, which Severin just slaps away comically easily. And then he starts... the other biker guy tries to like strangle Severin, and Severin's just kind of humoring him, pretending that it's doing something. And
then what does he do? Doesn't he like crush his head?
Yes.
He like squeezes his head.
And breaks his... It sounds like he like... snaps his neck or something really fast.
He like squeezes his head and then snaps the neck. And then that's when he goes to bite him. And he's like, "Oh, I hate when they ain't been shaved." But he kind of does like a vampire move where he kind of hisses at him first.
Mm-hmm.
And then goes to bite him. But when he hisses, like, you don't see any fangs. That's what I'm saying. Like, they're vampires, but it seems like no one has fangs, or at least you don't see them.
Yeah, you don't.
A lot of vampire movies kind of will show you that these people have fangs.
Yeah, it's almost like a trademark.
Yeah, and from what I can tell from watching this movie, they don't. These vampires don't.
Also, I don't want to gloss over this with the biker that we were just talking about that was killed. He has sunglasses on even though it's dark, and Severin does he takes them, which is very iconic. I feel like him wearing the shades, and it's again a callback to Terminator.
Yeah,
but I love
where he takes the shades,
the Wayfarers, and he puts them on, and then he just fucking murders him.
And then that's after he kills that guy, is the finger looking good. The movie's gory too.
Yeah, it's pretty. There's a lot of hyper violence, like almost. What's his name? Verhoeven-esque.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite to that extent, and not as much, but definitely it's there.
And back to the waitress, because I don't think we touched on it. Diamondback is the one that actually kills her.
Yeah, she slits her throat, really.
Slits her throat, and then Jesse holds her down and lets her blood pour into the beer mug. And at which point I think May and Jesse, Diamondback, and Homer all drink from that mug. So they get out of the bar, they burn the bar down. Let the Caleb lets James LaGrosse go away or run away. And then they pick him up, and that's where they head for the motel. And it drove me nuts watching it, where I'm thinking, they steal the cars, but, like, why weren't they thinking ahead? Why weren't they, like, blacking out the windows as soon as they got the car?
When it was still dark? Yeah,
because, like, in both instances where they have to steal a new car, they're, like, waiting until the sun is coming up before they're trying to block out the sunlight from the windows. I was like, why wasn't that the first fucking thing you guys did? Get it ready to go so that when the sun does come up, you're protected.
Yeah.
But it makes for some cool sequences. But when they get to the motel, there's that funny scene where Henriksen is like trying to get the key from the proprietor.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's like taking his sweet ass time. And you can tell that Henriksen's getting super annoyed. He's watching the sun kind of come in through the window and move across the counter. And when the guy goes to finally hand him the key, he takes his scarf off and kind of wraps his hand up in it when he grabs it. And then the guy says, "Oh, hey, you look familiar. Like, haven't you been around here before?" And he says, "Oh yeah, I come through here about every 50 years or so get that reservation ready." By the way, Lance Henriksen, great villain role. Maybe his best villain role, or maybe his second best, behind Hard Target, of course.
Oh yeah,
which gets a reference in Halloween Ends, which I told you I would make a reference to Halloween Ends, like randomly in the show, because the guy that runs like the junkyard is like watching Hard Target, like so random.
Yeah, it's Corey's dad, right?
Yeah, Corey's dad is like watching Hard Target, and there's at least 2 shots of the movie throughout that scene.
I'm assuming they did that because that's a Universal property as well?
Probably easy to get the rights because it's a Universal property. But Hard Target is bananas, and Lance Henriksen is a great villain in it. So between Hard Target and this movie, what's the best villain role from Lance Henriksen? Probably this, because he's a lot more menacing in this, but he's probably chewing more scenery in Hard Target.
Yes, because he's Hooker or Henriksen's character in Near Dark is very much like he's menacing and creepy, and you can tell he's dangerous, but he's a lot more quieter than Severin, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then in Hard Target, he's like very balls to the wall. Henriksen is, where he's just completely unhinged, where you know, he doesn't care, and I don't know.
He does have that really awesome weapon that's it's almost like a breach weapon that has like the single round that has to be loaded into it.
Yes, and there's a bunch of slow motion shots of that shit.
God, I'm gonna watch Hard Target like in the next 2 or 3 days now, because it's awesome.
Yep, John Woo.
So yeah, he's a good villain in this movie, and they're in the motel, and then there's another really great sequence, so soon after the bar sequence, And that's when the cops show up at the motel, brought there by, James LaGrosse, who escaped the massacre at the bar. And they show up at the door. They start knocking. And there's that cool effect where Paxton looks outside. And it's daylight, so he gets like half of his face burned. And again, the makeup effects are awesome. Because it's like black and charred, but also like really bloody and gory too.
Is it just me, or does it seem they're able to heal, right?
Yeah, they heal. They heal, but like they still kind of have like the black, almost soot.
Yeah.
On their face, like that takes a while to go away, but they do heal. Because, he gets his face like half burned. And then when he blasts the first cop like through the door, like the sunlight comes in through the door and hits him in the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like that little bit of fire that flares up on his stomach and he goes flying back into the bathroom. And then there's just this really awesome shootout. Like in typical Western fashion where you see all the bullet holes in the wall and like the sunlight's coming in through the walls. And that's we referenced it before where Homer's like really scared. I think because he knows like he doesn't want to get burned by the sun. And that seems like what he's really scared of. Well,
because as maybe I'm jumping too far ahead, but I think that if they're in the sun too long, they implode.
Yeah, they burn up. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he seems terrified that that's what's going to happen to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Obviously they probably won't be killed by the gunfire, but it seems like the thought of them being dragged out into the sunlight is what really terrifies Homer.
Because these cops are trying to get them to come out of the house, but they literally can't, or they will.
Yeah,
die.
They'll die. And then there's that shootout, which is again really great. And there's a lot of quippy lines in it where Severn asks Jesse like how he's doing. He's like, "Oh, like shit. How are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm down to my last inch of skin." And then Caleb says, "Hey," he looks outside. He sees the van, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to make a run for the van." So there's like some debate on whether or not they should let him go. Quick debate. But then, he calls Jesse grandpa, or dad. I think it's grandpa. He calls him and Jesse hands him the keys and, sarcastically calls him son. And he says, what do we have to lose? And Diamondback says, just another pretty face. So Jesse makes a run for the van out in the sunlight. He's obviously burning up, but he's trying to protect himself with a blanket. And then one of the deputies is shooting at him the entire time. And he gets shot like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, because there's somebody stationed in the back of the house.
Yeah. So he gets shot, but he manages to make it to the van, even though he's pretty much on fire by that point. Gets in the van, crashes through the wall. And then rescues the family. And they take off. And at that point in time, where they were very antagonistic towards him and were threatening to kill him because he couldn't adapt to the vampire lifestyle, this is kind of what bonds him to them, is his rescue.
Yeah, because once they get to the next kind of hotel room, then they're like thanking him, and then Severin like gives him like one of his spurs, and it's like he's being really accepted because he got them out of this pickle,
Yeah, he put himself in danger, both with the cops, but also the vampire of burning up in the sunlight. He put himself in danger to get the van to rescue them, which kind of shows that he kind of needs them too. Because he can't go and live his life because he's now a vampire. So he kind of needs this family as much as he needs his real family.
He does.
So yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah. When they get to that hotel, they're happy and excited and thanking him. And you said Severin gives him the spur, and Homer goes to shake his hand and kind of does the, too slow move, but then, shakes it for real. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. You go.
Oh, I was just gonna do a callback to something we forgot to mention, where when they kidnap Caleb, essentially, he doesn't believe that he's different now, or doesn't understand what kind of transformation he's been through. So he tries to go back home, and he goes and buys a bus ticket, and he hasn't fed yet at this time, so he's super weak and just he can't eat. He tries to eat candy and nothing tastes good to him anymore, and he ends up just kind of circling back to May, and she lets him feed on her, and then he gets his strength back. So it's almost like he has, like you were saying, he has no choice but to follow this group of people, because he literally, he can't go home alone without potentially dying.
Yeah. Yeah, and the scene at the bus station is great. He looks like hell.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with, like, the side of his face, like, by his hair. It's almost like green and black.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that's left over from him kind of getting a little burned up out in the sunlight before they pick him up in the RV.
Yeah.
But he's, like, super sweaty and gross looking. There's the cop that shows up that, is wondering if he's on drugs. Then the cop, like, kind of runs his hand over his face, and he's got, like, that bandage on his hand, which looks gross, too, because the blood is, like, seeping through it.
Like,
thinking, like, oh,
I wonder what that was about. That's so random.
Yeah. Like, you can see Caleb, like, looking at the hand because of the blood. But also, it's like, what did that guy do to his fucking hand? And why is that, like, not bandaged better? It's like he just fucking, like, stuck a knife through his hand and bandaged it up, like, 30 seconds before he came over to check on Caleb.
And then Caleb kind of swoons the cop over, and he's like, yeah, I'm just like $3 short. Like, can you help me out or what? And he's in the cop gives him the money, and he's all, you get home and you be a good boy. All weird.
He tries to eat the chocolate bar.
Can't do it.
Buys it out of the vending machine and gets like a bite into it, and has to spit it out. So yeah, there's that scene at the bus station, and then he makes it back to May, and then May, bites her hand and lets him feed from it. And she does that again later when he fails to kill the truck driver. She ends up feeding on the truck driver. I'm assuming Caleb can't do it because this guy is being really nice to them, really cordial towards them, and he makes himself sick almost thinking about what they're gonna do. Mm-hmm. And May ends up feeding on him, and then she lets him, after she's done, then she has Caleb feed on her, which is still cool. Like, that's a cool little detail in the lore, because I feel like you don't see that very much. And then May also makes it known where she says, like, yo, you can't do this too much because you could kill me in the process. Yeah, because he's just like really getting in there on her wrist. Uh-huh. Like, just continuing to suck that blood. And then even when she says that, like, she pushes him away and he falls down, he's got like a smile on his face. It's like real creepy. Caleb is not a good dude. Also, am I alone in thinking that he really looks like Hayden Christensen a lot in this at some points? Yeah, he's got that kind of look to him. Okay. Pasdar should have been a bigger star, man. He's really good in this. He got big off of Heroes, right? Yeah, that's one thing, and I thought he was very good in Heroes, at least the first season. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Heroes was a show that was amazing for one season, and then was trash. Until I bailed on it like halfway through the third, I think.
Well, that had to do with there was a big writer strike at that time. Right?
I think the writer strike it put the skids on a lot of shows.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I think the shows never could recover from that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the shows that around, and I think Heroes never recovered from the writer strike, which hobbled its second season.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Pazdar is really good in the first season as the guy running for, was it mayor or was it like senator? Something. He was running for some kind of higher office.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very good in the first season where he was a good guy, but not really. He kind of had like some shit that he was working out, or he was like real selfish and self-involved. Yeah, he's good in here. He does a lot of voice work now, but I don't know any other movies I've really seen him in besides Near Dark. He's in Top Gun for like a little bit, OG Top Gun. But yes, I agree with you. He's kind of got that same kind of vibe to him, except like a better actor.
I knew that was coming.
Hey, you know what? Maybe Hayden Christensen is a pretty good actor, but not in those fucking Star Wars movies. And that's probably a product of George Lucas's shitty writing on those films. So going back to they get back to the hotel or the motel after they escape the shootout, and then that's where, just randomly by happenstance, because Caleb's dad and sister are out looking for him, and they figure out kind of not necessarily where he is, but that he's not in Texas. He actually went north to Kansas after they left Oklahoma. So they head to the Kansas area, and then just happened to be at the motel when I guess the Hooker family is what you would call them, even though I think Hooker is really just Jesse's last name.
Mm-hmm.
They're obviously not a real family, but I just referred to them as the Hookers. But Homer comes across Sarah, and obviously wants to turn her, so he'll have someone else his age, or around that same age. And then Severin goes and pulls his dad out of the hotel room or the motel room, and then there's that great scene where his dad pulls the gun and shoots Jesse like in the chest, and then Jesse spits the bullet out
and puts it in his like front shirt pocket, and he's like,
yeah.
"Here, this is for you." Or
I know that Caleb's dad's like concerned for him and everything, but like Caleb's dad's kind of a shitty father too, because like they're at the motel and he like lets the little girl like wander around at 5 a.m. and get a fucking Coke. He lets her like drink a Coke at 5 a.m.
Yeah, and he's definitely not, especially that you're tracking your older son's kidnappers and you're so relaxed about your daughter.
Your daughter, who's what, maybe 7-ish years old?
Yeah.
He's just like, oh yeah, you want to go out and hang out at the motel like super early in the morning? Go get a Coke? Yeah, why not?
It's like
do your thing.
It's like A Quiet Place all over again.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, that's shitty parenting. I'm not a parent, but I could probably do a better job than that. So then he shoots Jesse in the chest. Jesse gives him the bullet, and then there's that struggle, and they get the door open, and the sunlight's coming in. And because of the sunlight on the vampires, they're kind of incapacitated, and they're able to save Sarah, and Caleb runs away with his parent, with his father and his sister. And as they're driving away, he says, "Hey, I'm sick, I'm bit." And his dad keeps telling him, "We'll take you to the hospital." And he's like, "No, I can't go to the hospital because something is wrong with me." And he shows him, he kind of puts his hand in the sunlight and shows him. And then he sees all the stuff in the back of the truck. I'm assuming, is he a vet?
It looks like that.
There's something. I mean, they have the ranch, so he probably deals with animals. He might not necessarily be a vet, but he sees the bottles and the tubes, and gets the idea to do the transfusion.
That's another really cool spin, like being able to reverse vampirism.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And his dad, gives him the transfusion, but it doesn't really look like it works out. Because he thinks that Caleb is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Sarah comes in the next morning, they're hugging, but then the sunlight comes in and hits Caleb, and he wakes up, and he's normal again. And then there's, because it's such a tight movie, there's not a whole lot of time. There's just one scene of them kind of at the dinner table having a normal life again. And then Caleb sees May outside. And when he goes back in, Sarah's missing.
Well, yeah, because at the dinner table, I think Sarah, she finishes her meal, and then she's like, "Yeah, I want Caleb to read me a story before bed," and he's like, "Okay, I'll be up in a bit." And
yeah,
so she goes upstairs, and they think everything is fine, and then May shows up outside, and then of course we as viewers are like, okay, well then the clan obviously is looming around somewhere. It can't just be May. And then we're right, because when Caleb ends up going back, he goes up to see where Sarah is, if she's okay, and then the window's wide open and she's been snatched again.
Yeah. And Caleb tries to go after her and sees that the tires on the vehicles have been slashed. So he gets on the horse and takes off after her. And then runs into Severin,
who just throws him like nothing.
Yeah. Throws him, 20, 30 feet away.
That's a super cool shot.
And then the trucker comes, and Caleb gets him to stop and tells him, leave or else you're going to get killed. And that's when Severin shoots him with a windshield.
Yeah, very No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
He's, Caleb's kind of pleading with them, like, hey, come on, go with me, go with this. And the trucker's not having it. And it's like, you have 10 seconds to get the fuck off of my rig. And by that time, Severin just shoots him directly in the head. And he's
the truck driver goes to give the truck driver goes to give him a 10-second countdown.
Yeah.
And he goes 10, 9, 4. And immediately gets shot.
And then there's that really quick detail where Caleb, pushes the poor guy over, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry."
he told the guy, "Get out of here." As in a lot of horror movies, you tell someone, "Hey, get out of here." You gotta believe me. They don't believe him, and then they end up getting killed. But there's that really cool sequence where he drives the truck and he smashes into Severin.
Mm-hmm.
And then Severin pops up like the Terminator, off of the grill of the truck. And it's the makeup effects again. He's his face is so bloody.
Yeah, it's the left side of his face is almost just completely open.
Yeah. Isn't that what he says? Fasten your fucking seatbelt.
Yeah, and he just starts tearing apart the engine.
He's having the most fun of anyone in this film.
And that's they do a really cool kind of callback to when May and Caleb take the the ride from that truck driver earlier in the film, and he's kind of walking Caleb through how the correct way to kind of maneuver around a rig, and so
like the gears and the shifting,
and the brakes.
What everything does. Yes,
and so Caleb kind of uses that knowledge that he remembers, and kind of it's a foreshadowing of what he does to kill Severin. It's pretty cool.
He jackknifes the truck and jumps out, and then the rig, not the trailer part of the truck, smashes into the rig. It looked like a gasoline truck, perhaps.
Yes,
that like kind of cylindrical trailer. It smashes into the truck and then explodes.
And so that also lets us know, because I don't think it's the rules of these vampires are very kind of up in the air, but I guess they're vulnerable to fire as well.
Yeah.
Which is why Severin isn't able to walk away from this. He dies from that explosion.
Yeah.
And there's a really cool, again, another detail where his, like, the lone spur that he had kind of flies down next to Caleb, and he picks it up and puts it in his back pocket.
That's a souvenir. And then that's when Jesse is there with May. They're at the car.
Did you notice you can see the shadow of was Sarah and Homer kind of tussling in the back of that station wagon?
Yes.
And then Caleb keeps saying, like, where's my sister at? Where's my sister at? You got to give her back. She's not a part of this. And Hooker is just not having it. And then it seems like May and Diamondback kind of backstab him.
Yeah, I don't think necessarily that Diamondback backstabbed him. She was almost toying with Caleb. Because Sarah manages to get away and runs towards Caleb, and Diamondback is coming up behind Caleb with the knife.
Yeah.
And Sarah manages to escape Homer, yells at Caleb to watch out, and Diamondback throws the knife. Caleb moves out of the way, and the knife like flies and sticks to Jesse's teeth.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool shot. Go
ahead.
No, I was going to say he takes it out.
But there's that, the reason why I was like, did Diamondback want Caleb to get away with Sarah? Because then they run past her and she goes, hurry up, get out of here, or whatever.
Yeah, but she does that and then she looks back at Jesse and kind of has that evil smile.
Okay.
I think it was just, she was toying with him. She wanted him to run because she wanted Jesse to shoot at him.
Oh, okay.
Which he goes to do, and then just as he's about to pull the trigger, May, pushes him. So the shot goes wild. Yeah, I kind of thought that at first with Diamondback, but then, like, as soon as they run past, she kind of turns with that smile and looks at Jesse. And then, Caleb and Sarah are running away. Looks to be through that same field that Caleb is running through in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's tired and drops her and tells her to keep running. And then the car comes and scoops her up. And she's kidnapped a third time at that point. Where was the dad?
Yeah, he just kind of doesn't. He's at the dinner table and then he's gone. He's not around.
Yeah, like, don't you think, like, if Caleb discovered that Sarah was kidnapped again, like, he would go on and tell the dad? The dad should have been on the case as well. That's what I'm saying. He's a shitty dad. His parenting skills aren't up to par. But then there's the shot with them in the station wagon. And again, I'm thinking, why didn't they fucking black out the windows to the station wagon like when they first got it? Now the sun is coming up and they're like frantically like trying to, to get covered.
Especially if they've been doing this for so long, you would think that they would prep.
Be prepared. But it's Homer's like trying to hold down Sarah, and then May grabs her, jumps out the back, and putting herself in great danger, manages to save Sarah. She's running down the road. She's obviously burning up. And when she reaches Caleb, he puts his jacket around her. And Homer's falls out of the car and chases her. And I think that's the only time where the effects are like post-production effects.
Yeah, like did whatever digital was then.
Yeah, like they were painting the flames, like doing the matte flames on Homer. Obviously, because you need to see him. This isn't like some shot that's far away where it could easily be a stunt person. It's obviously him who's smoking and burning. So it's some post-production effects, but probably one of the few post-production effects. Everything else looked to be on set. But yeah, he catches fire, and just completely burns up in the road and then explodes. And then again, they kind of feel like a real family because Severin's gone, Homer's gone, May, basically betrays them in order to save Sarah. And they almost are heartbroken and distraught. I kind of feel like they could have gotten away if they wanted to. But at this point in time, it's like their kids are gone. They kind of have nothing to live for anymore. So they basically just say, fuck it, and drive headed towards Caleb, even though they know that the sunlight's killing them. And then eventually, they catch fire and the car explodes. What do you think? Because they feel like, oh, we don't really have any reason to live anymore.
Yeah, I kind of wondered why they almost just like give up.
Yeah, like they could have just said, "Hey, fuck it, those guys are dead. We need to self-preserve and take off." But instead, they're just, what? I guess this is the end.
Yeah, I think your how do you say, your logic checks out there. That they came to the end of the line and just get kind of were just like whatever, and like you said, they continue to drive towards Caleb, and doesn't he say something like torched or scorched?
I think he says roast.
Oh, roast. That's right.
They're in the car, they're underneath the blankets, but like they're driving into the sun. So they start burning up in the car, and then Diamondback says good times, and then they fucking die.
And that's when don't we go back to the Caleb's ranch, and he does the blood transfusion for May.
Yeah, gives May the transfusion, and she's almost scared when she wakes up, and he says, "Hey, don't be scared. It's just the sunlight."
And they they do that the freeze frame credit roll. Yep.
And that's another good thing about the movie. Story's over, it ends.
What obviously you love this movie, right?
Yeah, very much so.
What would be your overall rating for it out of 10?
Out of 10? I think it's probably a solid 8 or 9.
Okay.
For me, I like that it's like a good story that's told very quickly and economically. It doesn't fuck around with a lot of stuff. I don't know over the course of how many days this takes place. I think like a week maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that, this is she doesn't have a lot of movies. I think she's only got 10. Including The Loveless, which I don't know if you mentioned is actually co-directed. It's not a solo film.
That's right.
This is her first solo movie.
Directorial debut.
Yeah. Because she directed The Love List with a partner by the name of Monty Montgomery. So whether you rate this movie, you own it, so I'm taking that you like it.
Yeah, I would say it teetering between an 8.5 and a 9 for sure. It's a shame that a lot of people don't know that this exists, and to come out so close after stuff like The Lost Boys, you would think that people would have eaten this up, but they didn't.
No, and I think part of that is we were talking about how it's not really streaming, I think, before air. Part of it is the rights issues. The De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, who was the producers on the movie, were going into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Like when the movie was released. So I think because they were going into bankruptcy, this movie pretty much has no marketing, or had no marketing.
It wasn't being like I said in my write-up, I think that affected how many screens were showing it too.
Yeah, because it only opens up on 200 some odd screens
in
the beginning. And then it kind of goes for a wider release, but it still doesn't get much traction. But it's weird because the De Laurentiis Group, because they're going into bankruptcy, but I'm like, dude, they had some solid movies behind them before this. You know, they had Manhunter, they had Blue Velvet, they had Evil Dead 2. Like, those are solid movies. I don't know, were none of those movies successful? Or were they just a poorly run company that ended up going bankruptcy because of bad decisions, not necessarily bad movies? But yeah, you mentioned Lost Boys. The Lost Boys came out, I think, a couple of months before this.
Which was a massive, massive hit, right? That made money.
Where is that? I think it might be in my notes somewhere. Lost Boys grossed $32.2 million on an $8.5 million budget.
There you go.
Yeah, it's like a bummer that this movie didn't do well when it opened up, and it's kind of a cult movie now. But still, how many people really know? I mean, it was years before I knew it was a Bigelow movie, but that was probably because Bigelow wasn't the name that I knew for a while. I don't think I really knew who she was until maybe Point Break.
What else, man? Do you have anything else we should touch on in your notes?
Yeah, absolutely. I got some good notes here. First of all, you mentioned at the top of the show that the movie's co-written her and Eric Red.
Yes.
Eric Red wrote a great movie the year before this that you and I both love. That was another kind of low budget movie that really didn't pop until it was on cable and on video, and is now another good cult movie.
Yes.
You know what it is. What is it?
The Hitcher.
The Hitcher. God, great movie, which I just rewatched not terribly long ago. Obviously, we love Rutger Hauer. We mentioned it when we talked about Blade Runner back in the summer.
Of course.
And Eric Red wrote The Hitcher, co-wrote this, co-wrote Bigelow's next film after this, which is Blue Steel, with Jamie Lee Curtis, which is another pretty fucking solid movie. Which I think was it Ebert referred to Blue Steel as kind of like another Halloween movie, only with a killer that uses a gun instead of a butcher knife, because he's almost relentless, like he's Michael Myers. And Jamie Lee Curtis is a police officer trying to catch the killer. Really solid thriller that again made no money. Probably not a lot of people have seen it. It is easier to find, though. I think you can find it on Amazon. But I wanted to ask you if you had seen any of Eric Red's directorial movies. Have you seen Bad Moon?
No.
You can skip it. It's like a werewolf movie. It's no good. I remember seeing the trailer for it and then watching it. I think it comes out in 96. Bad Moon with is it Michael Pare from Streets of Fire. I think is the guy that becomes a werewolf. It's not great. Stick with the movies that Eric Red wrote instead of directed. When this movie got set up, because Bigelow was relatively inexperienced behind the camera,
mm-hmm.
Do you know that the producers told her that if she was at all like out of her depth with the production after a few days, like they were going to dump her and replace her?
That just sounds like some chauvinist bullshit.
Yeah, like they wouldn't be doing that to a male director making a debut.
And also, anyway, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, it looks great. She knows what she's doing.
Especially like the way that the lighting and the fact that most of it's like, I would say, I think I read 80% of the night shoots are for real. They're shooting like at night. It's not soundstage.
Yeah.
And that's very, very impressive because of, a lot of this movie, because we are dealing with vampires, is at nighttime.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm glad that, she knew what she was doing enough that the producers weren't going to fucking fire her. But I have seen The Loveless. It's not great. That was one I had to track down when I listened to, I think, the Blank Check miniseries on her.
Mm-hmm.
years ago. So because I'm a completist, I tracked down The Loveless and watched it. And Willem Dafoe is pretty good in it, but it's not like a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
But you can kind of see some themes that she was starting to develop.
Well,
she kind of builds on with this movie.
That kind of how do you say, like rebel, like outlaw theme.
Yeah, absolutely.
Flows through over. Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of ends up in Point Break as well. So that was good. So I found this in the notes. I watched this movie back to back last night and this afternoon. Did not see it at all. Supposedly there's like a cameo from James Cameron
in
the movie, but where it is, I have no idea. Because there's not like a lot of people, there's not a lot of cast, but it said that James Cameron has a cameo as a trucker.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't say that stood out to me either. I don't.
But I mean, he's obviously not the guy that May and Caleb are riding with early on in the movie. That's a black guy. He's not the trucker that gets killed at the end. There's a scene where Caleb is like walking past some trucks, like at a truck stop where they're washing them, but the truckers are in the background. So unless one of those guys is James Cameron, but according to the notes I came across, like he cameos in the scene where I guess he gives Severin the bird. He flips him the bird. But I watched it, like paid attention, never saw it. I don't know if that's a deleted scene. I don't know if it's like a blink and you'll miss it.
Maybe maybe it is something that was left on the cutting room floor, because the fact that you can't pinpoint it is kind of suspect in itself, right?
Yeah. Which we didn't talk about this. I want to go back. There's a great sequence early on after they have Caleb, where you kind of see everyone out on their own, like making their kill.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same sequence where May and Caleb are riding with the trucker, but you see Homer like pretending to be a kid that fell off his bike, like lure in, some unsuspecting stranger. There's Severin is all like fancied up with like the white shirt and the bolo tie, like hitchhiking, and he picks up like the two women in the truck. And then there's the great scene where Jesse and Diamondback are riding along, and they pick up the hitchhiker, and they go to rob him. He has a buddy who like comes out, and they go to rob him. And, you know, they're being like real creepy with Diamondback.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Jesse says, "Oh, you're going to look really funny, like, with your face ripped off." And then he turns up the radio and it cuts. You don't actually see them kill, but like it was, those guys thought they were like real hot shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had no idea that they were fucking with some real killers. But it's funny because the guy's like pawing at Diamondback, like with the gun. And like her and Jesse just kind of share that look where it's like, yeah, this is going to be fun.
Especially because I'm pretty sure when that guy got in the back of the vehicle, Diamondback and Jesse's intentions were to feed on him in the first place, probably, right?
Yeah. That's what they were out. They were, you know, driving around looking for food.
Probably.
They got some unsuspecting rube who turned out to be, you know, some guy that was going to rob him and his friend. And then those guys definitely got more than they were bargaining for. But that's a great sequence that when we were kind of talking about the film itself, we forgot to mention, kind of showing each of them out there getting their nightly meal. But I would have loved to have seen Diamondback and Jesse fuck those two guys up.
Yeah, I wonder why it kind of transitions the way that it does. Maybe just budgetary reasons or something.
Probably. And again, much like The Hitcher, you don't have to show all the violence. The implied violence is plenty. So if anyone out there knows where the James Cameron like cameo is, please like get in touch with Wesley and let him know, because I'm dying to know. I think he mentioned at the top of the show, but like the Tangerine Dream score is awesome.
Oh yeah.
It might be my second favorite score from them, because the first is Thief, obviously. Thief rules. But this one is very good. And I have to admit that I paid probably more money than I should have to get this soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot, not as much as I paid for that vinyl special edition, the Mondo special edition for the Alien soundtrack.
So did they press this? You have the record?
I don't have it on vinyl. No, I got it on CD.
Oh, okay.
But I think it was like out of print. Like one of those that you would find at that, like one of the booths at Comic-Con where the guy sells like all the out of print soundtracks.
Mm-hmm.
It was like from that type of seller. So I paid a little too much, maybe, for one CD.
Hey, but I mean, I know you love Tangerine Dream because of their connection with Michael Mann. So, of course, like I wouldn't put it past you spending money like that.
Hey, believe me, when you said you were going to Amoeba and I told you to try to get me the Keep soundtrack,
yes,
like the special edition soundtrack, I'd pay a healthy penny for that as well.
Dude,
if anyone ever finds it.
Yeah, trust me, man. It that day became about trying to find your stuff. And that was it. And I was getting really mad because I couldn't find anything. And then I was like, oh, it's because all of these are super rare.
Yeah. No, don't, like, go and have fun, man. Don't be searching for my shit all day long. Look for your stuff. But yeah, a lot of that stuff is hard to come by, and that's why when you said, hey, is there anything that you want me to look for, I give you that stuff because I cannot find it, or cannot find it for, you know, a somewhat reasonable price.
But see, you this is kind of veering off a bit, but you giving me that list and letting me know what you're looking for led me to get you the Handsome Boy Modeling School record later on down the road.
Yeah, that was That was very cool of you, and I really appreciate that, and that's a great record.
Yeah.
But if anyone ever finds the Keep soundtrack, the special edition, the 2 CD special edition, which I think is from overseas.
To import.
Yeah, the imports. I will happily pay decent money for that. I do have the regular CD soundtrack, but it's almost like not even the music that's in that movie. So I don't know. When I listen to that single CD soundtrack, I'm like, I don't remember any of these tracks from that movie. But Tangerine Dream, awesome score for Near Dark. We mentioned the Keep. And then they also, some other notable scores I know that they did were Sorcerer. Have you ever seen Sorcerer?
That's one I don't think I've seen.
The William Friedkin movie. The Tangerine Dream score is really awesome for that movie as well. Legend. Have you seen Legend?
Yes.
Firestarter. The original Firestarter is a Tangerine Dream score.
Very nice.
And Risky Business, I know, is another one of theirs. I know that they've done a bunch of other scores, but those are the ones that I know off the top of my head. Because those are the movies I've seen that I remember. Oh yeah, it's Tangerine Dream score. That's awesome. But I have to look up some of those other films to see what other scores they've done. You mentioned that the film gets an October release, 1987. So we're 35 years? This is like the 35th anniversary of it.
Mm-hmm.
We're just past the 35th anniversary because it opens up in early October. Only makes $636,000 on its opening weekend. But then again, it was only released in something like 260 theaters. But it comes in number 13 in the box office. What's number 1? Gets beat by Fatal Attraction, which is a pretty monster hit of the year, which I think was in its third or fourth week of release.
Have you read that they're bringing that back? Is it like a show or something?
Fatal Attraction?
Yeah.
I think I heard that. Now that you mentioned the show thing, I think I heard that there was supposed to be like a show. I mean, whatever. It's not going to be as landmark as the film is. I hate when there's like a popular movie and then they try to like make a TV show out of it.
Well, Fatal Attraction has been imitated for years. I mean, you can see it in...
Oh, yeah, like so many other movies bite off of it.
Yeah, Swim Fan or that Obsessed movie with Beyonce. Like, it's like almost, they redo it like almost every generation, every decade or so.
And all of them are fucking forgettable. I'm kind of bummed that opened up in 13th place. Ouch. Then again, it was only in a limited amount of theaters to start, but still. It did get pretty decent reviews, though.
Yeah, that's the... It did poorly at the box office money-wise, but as far as word of mouth and everything was pretty positive for this one.
Here's a review that really stands out. A guy by the name of Alan Jones wrote for Radio Times. So Alan Jones of Radio Times gives it 4 out of 5 stars, describes it as a landmark horror film of the 80s, considered it one of the best vampire movies ever made, and said it's a visually stunning and frightening package spinning a genuinely scary tale. I cannot disagree with any of that. Yeah. I do think it's one of the best vampire movies ever. I think it is a great horror film from the 80s. That isn't necessarily like what the 80s horror films were really known for, and that's pretty much like the slasher movies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good one. Rolling Stone, Time, they both gave it good reviews. So we were talking to Hitcher earlier, not the shitty remake. But in 2006, Rogue Pictures and Platinum Dunes, which was Michael Bay's production company, they were in the business of making really fucking awful remakes of perfectly good horror movies at the time. The remake of The Hitcher being one. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake is another. What's it? Oh, the Amityville Horror movie, which you know why I hate that movie.
Even I think Platinum Dunes did a I could be wrong, but the Friday the 13th reboot as well, right?
Yep. And Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, that's a dog shit movie.
Yeah. So in 2006, they say that they were going to remake Near Dark. They say it was going to be directed by Samuel Bayer, who went on to direct the shitty Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. So they had plans to remake it, and then a couple years after that, Twilight blew up, and for some reason they decided that there's too many similarities between Near Dark and Twilight, so they weren't going to remake it, which I'm glad that they decided not to remake it, but also what similarities between Twilight and Near Dark are there? Those are two wildly divergent films, if I'm not mistaken.
I would say just they're talking about the human interaction between like a mortal and a vampire, where it would be like the the connection between Bella and what the fuck is his name?
Pattinson's character.
Yeah. Edward, I guess. And then May and and Caleb, I guess. And that's reaching.
Yeah, that is reaching, because I never look at Near Dark and say, oh yes, it's a love story.
No. It's the same way you don't think of the OG Terminator as even though it is, but you don't think of, oh yeah, it's just Linda Hamilton and Kyle Reese like banging each other or whatever.
Yeah. It's a love story between those two characters. No, it's not. So they didn't remake it, which is good, but their reasons for not remaking it were really weird. And again, I'm so happy that they didn't remake it. It's a perfectly good movie. It doesn't need to be remade. Yeah. But especially to be remade so poorly, like all of those other fucking Platinum Dunes horror remakes.
What they should do, even now, is just bring this back to the theaters.
Great time. Like, on the repertory screenings, like for Halloween in October.
Yeah, just bring it back. They did it with this October. They did it with Trick or Treat, which was a straight to DVD release.
Did you go to see it?
I didn't make it because I got too busy. I wasn't able to. But they also did the same thing for Scream 2. They brought that back for like a stint. So I'm saying, like, they're obviously doing it with movies. So Near Dark. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe fucking Drop the Mic will do it in San Diego.
Yeah. Yeah, do a screening of Near Dark, because it rules, and not a lot of people have seen it. Maybe it's still with the rights issues. Maybe like it can't get a release. I don't know who owns the rights to the De Laurentiis Group's films now. Manhunter and Blue Velvet. I'm trying to think, because I have both of those, but I don't know who actually has the rights to them. MGM, maybe? Which MGM was owned by Sony, and I think now is owned by Amazon. You own it. What does your cover look like?
Mine is the it's just Severin on the front.
Oh, dude, do you have the one that was the original poster where he's like all burned up and bloodied?
With the light shining through him.
Oh, you fucker! Where did you get that?
I ordered it a while back.
Shit. This movie always scared me long before I saw it, because when I was a kid, we would go and rent movies from this place a few miles down the road from my house called the Video Library, which was on Morena Boulevard. And they would always have, posters along the wall. And this was one of the posters that they had on the wall for the longest time. And it would scare the shit out of me, because it was that image of Severin all bloodied and burned up and had like the sunlight coming through like bullet holes in them. Mm-hmm. And I thought, man, that's such a great now I think, man, that's such a great image, like a great cover image or a poster image. Why the DVD that I had of it did not have that as the cover. It had I think Severin, Jesse, and Diamondback kind of lined up, standing there, well, kind of against like an orange background, like a dusk or sunrise background.
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that cover.
I'll have to see if I can find it. I don't have it anymore. I gave it to Joel because I have it on Blu-ray now, but the Blu-ray cover is even worse. Well, it's like Caleb and May, like kind of in some loving embrace, almost like the Twilight cover.
Yeah.
Probably what they were trying to go for at the time. And then it's got like that really cool shot before they go down to the bar where they're on like the ridge line of the hill, and they're backlit. It looks like it's got that shot on the front cover as well. Which I hate when they have a cool image, like for the one-sheet movie poster, and then when they release it on video, they change it up and then make it like super lame.
Yeah. Kind of like what they did for the Drive Blu-ray. where
it's just like him like walking down the street.
But they put the scorpion like on the front of his jacket or some bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, dumb stuff like that. It's like you have this really cool movie with all of this crazy imagery. Anything would be better than what they put on there.
Yeah.
Even
I think that they do that when the movie doesn't really make a profit at the theater. So when they bring it out on video, they try to make it look like something else or make it look like more exciting than it is or something. But like that image of Severin is just so striking. Like, stick with that. That's awesome.
Did you want to drop a little hint as to what we're going to be talking about at the end of November now?
What we're going to be talking about at the end of November is a movie from a director that I honestly can't believe hasn't been covered at all on this show before. Has been mentioned a couple of times. But in, 5.5 years you've been doing the show?
Yep.
I don't think that you've never covered this director. So I'm really excited to talk about this. One of his best films. One that's got some pretty famous fans. And that's all I will say. I'm really excited to talk about this director because he's a director that I really enjoy. But I'm excited to talk about it. And this movie should be a lot easier to find than Near Dark was. If I'm not mistaken, it's either streaming on HBO or like Showtime right now. And you can probably find it on Amazon. So it's a pretty well-known film. And I have the Criterion collection of it. I'm super excited to watch it.
I'll announce this now. But next week, we'll jump out of the spooky stuff with a Cronenberg film, Eastern Promises from 2007. Oh,
that's a good movie. I just rewatched that not terrible long ago either.
Yeah. You guys have that to look forward to next week with all of our hopefully returning co-hosts to discuss it with me.
Let me just say to everyone out there, if you haven't gotten it yet, new Omicron boosters are out. Make sure you get boosted before the winter flu season, holiday season. It's going to be around a lot of people. Be smart, get boosted. I just got mine. That's why we're doing this over the phone today and not in person. Absolutely. Have a safe Halloween. I
know, right? This is our farewell to October episode.
So it'll be a good one. I think it's going to probably be better than it was last year. Yeah, that's all I got for you.
All right, man. Well, closing out, if you're stumbling upon this podcast and you're unaware of what we do, we operate out of San Diego, California, and we are available on most major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Luminary, Spreaker, Stitcher, Sods, you name it. We're on there. So check us out. subscribe to the show if you haven't already. Give us a 5-star rating along with a little nice review if you have, an extra couple minutes, because those matter. And thank you to all the listeners out there for the constant support. We appreciate it, and we do all of this for you. And while I'm on that tangent, thank you, Chris, for allowing us to, or sharing your time with the show and just hopping on and coming back swinging this month. Appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you, as always, for having me on. I like chopping it up with you, talking movies. Again, you and I tend to bounce back and forth between bigger flicks, more well-known movies, and smaller, kind of more cult movies. And this is definitely one of those small films that I want to get people to check out and then watch if you haven't seen it.
Absolutely.
And even next month, I think is kind of a lesser known film.
Yeah, we're getting into the obscure territory. But it should be fun, and then releasing this content, we're hopefully swaying some people to check out these movies that don't have the kind of clout that they should have.
Absolutely. I hope that they do check them out.
Awesome, man.
I'm not trying to steer you wrong on a movie.
All right. With those final thoughts, this is Chris Pawlak and Wesley Swanson signing off, saying good fight and good night.
Make sure you vote.
That's right. Get out there.
Gee whiz, if you're not going to serve me a drink, well, I'll just have to drink his. How can you drink that shit? Go on, hit him a couple times. I'm trying to show the boy something.